as I said, I got so much from your words last week, Nathan. And I've just never heard it said more clearly. In fact, I wrote down specifically what he said, and I've been thinking about it ever since I was able to get it online. If you haven't heard Nathan's sermon last week, just go to our website and listen to it. It's the best 25 minutes you'll spend this next week. It's great. What he said was the go and make disciples. That go literally means you who have been made to walk with God in this designed walk, you who've been made to do that, and you who will be walking in that designed path. As you walk with God in this design, in this path that He's ordered for you, make disciples. It's funny, in the Great Commission, the only real verb that we've got is make disciples. That it's not, go isn't really a verb used there in the original text, and neither is baptize and neither is teach. The main verb is make disciples. So as you're going, as you're making disciples, make sure and baptize and teach. So the emphasis today is on the make disciples. And we've all been called to walk with God in a different path than what comes natural to us. What comes natural to us, that's easy. It's a life completely self-absorbed. It's a life where I wake up thinking about Jim Bob. I go through my day thinking about Jim Bob. And at night, I end the day by thinking about Jim Bob. For some of you, that would be a very boring day, but for me, I love that day. That's a very natural, easy day for me. And everything is seen through that. It's my time, and it's my toys, and it's my sex, it's my money, it's my recognition, it's my reputation, it's my life. That's the natural way of living. We're all drawn that way. So it's me at the center of the universe. The only problem with that is it's inaccurate. There's no human being that's at the center of the universe. As much as our secular humanists want to promote that kind of philosophy, we're not the center. Somebody else is. So why is it that what is so natural, what we all tend to do, why is it that none of us admire that? Have you thought about that? Have you ever been around somebody that's just completely self-consumed? That is so annoying. We all are drawn that way to ourselves, but when we're around somebody that's like that, we hate it. One of our favorite comedians is Brian Regan, and I got a sister-in-law here, and she and her husband, my brother-in-law David and Cheryl took Matilda and I to hear this guy a few years back, and he has a little segment that I think really describes this idea of somebody that's just self-consumed, and all they can talk about is themselves. So watch this. They cue that up there.
Why do people need to top other people? I've never understood it, and I see it all the time. Obviously, people get something out of it. At best, people wait for your lips to stop. Yeah, as soon as... Okay, you, me! You, me! You see the difference? You see that? Now I do. What is it about the human condition? People get something out of that. That's why I have a social fantasy. I wish I was one of the 12 astronauts who have been on our moon. They must love knowing they can beat anybody's story whenever they want. They can sit back quietly at a dinner party while some other person, some me monster's doing his thing, and let him go. Let him run with the line while you be quiet. Oh, really? Let him have his moment. Yeah, I'm a big traveler. I have my business. I got my own global enterprise I got to check on. Driving in the Autobahn because I keep a fleet of sports cars over in Zurich. Get a Swiss account that I got to check on. Mount Kilimanjaro expedition, might have to cancel that. Runways in Aspen are a lot shorter the first time you go in there. The Pacific Rim Company, we're going to try to take that over. Global enterprise. I walked on the moon. Well, you have the floor, Moonwalker. You mentioned driving on the Autobahn. That reminded me. Once I was driving in the Sea of Tranquility. In my lunar rover. And I, too, was worried about our speed till I remembered, wait, we're the only ones on the moon.
what's natural. What's natural is I want everybody to think about me. Maybe that's one of the temptations any preacher has to preach. You guys are all looking at moi right now. And so there's this huge rush, this huge adrenaline. Everybody's focus is right here. But what Jesus is calling us to is 180 degrees from that. It's a life of total selflessness. And that, frankly, that's what we all admire. I want to be the me monster, and I want to be the focus, but I want everybody to see me as the selfless guy, not the one that has to have all the attention. And that is the path that we've been designed to walk on. And Nathan was talking about last week. A path where we join God in finding others. A path where we are really focused on other people. A path that we don't merely look to our own personal interests, but we also look to the interests of others. It's a different kind of a life. Jesus actually said in Luke 19:10, I came to seek and save the lost. In other words, finding and restoring others to this new way of life, this design that God has put out there for us, that's our purpose. So, in a word, we're called to disciple. Let's look at our text again. This is from the Message. Look at the screen. Go out and train. That's the word that Eugene Peterson uses for disciple. Go out and train everyone you meet, far and near, in this way of life, marking them by baptism in the threefold name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Then instruct them in the practice of all I have commanded you. Jesus is actually saying, as you live and I bring people into your life, then you disciple them. You train them in this new way to live that I've taught and that I've shown you by example. He's called us to make disciples, which immediately exposes a limitation that all of us have. And not one of us can give something that we haven't first received. It's impossible. Look at this thing that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10. Jesus calls his 12 disciples to him, gives them authority to drive out spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. And then it names all of the guys. You've got Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, his brother John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, betrayed him. Okay, here we go. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. This is when they are receiving. Do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather first to the lost sheep of Israel. That's what Jesus was supposed to do. He's supposed to go to the Jew first. Verse 7. As you go, preach this message. The kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out the demons. And then Jesus reminds them, freely you have received. Now you're able to freely give. That's the way this thing works. So to go out and make disciples, in fact, we have a prerequisite. We have to first be a disciple. It doesn't go with me just going and talking about something that I haven't first received. So we gotta get back to we got the discipleship 101. What does it mean to be a disciple? One time Jesus was observing a conversation between some guy that was born blind that he just healed, and this guy was going to present himself to the temple, and the religious leaders at the temple recognized this guy as the one that had been blind. And so they get all caught up in this big theological discussion about when exactly he was healed, if it was on the right day, and they were going back and forth saying, well, you must be a disciple of this guy. No, we're a disciple. Look at the text. It's in John chapter 9 and verse 28. Look at the screen. They hurled insults. This is crazy. Religious leaders hurling insults at a guy who had just received his sight for the first time in his life. They hurled insults at him and said, you are this fellow's disciple. Speaking of Jesus. We're the disciples of Moses. So this is a common term. In fact, you go on, John the Baptist and the religious leaders called the Pharisees actually had disciples. Look over in Mark chapter 2 verse 18, you see this bear out. Now, John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, how is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not? Even the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 9 and verse 25 speaks of his disciples. So, you got your programs? Let's put this down first. Number one, the point is a disciple is a student. He's a learner. It's someone who aligns themselves with a teacher. The original word was used to describe someone that learned a trade, studied and learned under some kind of master teacher, an apprentice of sorts. You watch your leader, you study your leader, you learn his ways. You can see this actually happen with some of Jesus' disciples. Look at this passage. This is in Luke chapter 11 and verse 1. One day Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, Lord, teach us to pray. Just as John taught his disciples. No one had seen anyone pray like Jesus before. So his disciples saw this and they said, you got to teach us that. We haven't seen that before. He watches, he studies, and he learns from his master. So that's one aspect of being a disciple. You're a student, you're a learner, but there's another aspect that's more important. And that's that you're a follower. You're an imitator. This is what separates you from just that guy sitting at that desk in that classroom. Being a follower means that what you study and what you learn, you immediately swallow, hook, line, and sinker. You accept all of it and believe it, and you imitate it. Haven't you been in a course before with some teacher that's up there sharing something maybe that's subjective, and they're sharing their thoughts on it, and they have a premise, and then they give you a conclusion based on their premise, and the whole time you're thinking, I'm not buying any of that. I don't agree with this teacher at all. But what do? You learn it. You're the student. You learn it why? Because you're going to have to regurgitate it. You may completely disagree with what that teacher is saying, but you know you're going to see it later on in some kind of an exam. So you learn it. Disciples don't regurgitate. Disciples imitate. Everything that comes, they say, we take this as truth. They believe it. And this is where becoming a disciple of Jesus is a real rub. Because Jesus told us himself that his ways are not our ways. And his thoughts are not our thoughts. And many times what he is accomplishing, we can't begin to trace out all the reasoning behind what he's doing. So we're put in a position to believe and completely accept as truth something that Jesus is telling us that we would never come to on our own. Something that he wants us to do, some way he wants us to think, some place he wants us to go. And what makes it harder is many times what God is speaking specifically to you, many times he doesn't speak that to people in your life that you're closest to. Now you're stuck. Because you don't understand why Jesus is saying what he's saying, but you've already decided you're going to follow him. And then you have people that you love and respect the most that don't at all understand why you're doing what you're doing. And you try to explain to them, well, this is what I'm getting from the person I'm trying to follow. And you can't explain any logical way of why this is what it is. You see our rub? You're going where? You're doing what? You think that way? And when that comes from somebody who you dearly love, oh, that's the rough one. But he's preparing us for something. He's preparing us for something that we can't see. Most of you in here aren't old enough to remember this, but the first Karate Kid was way better than the one that came out a couple of years ago. It was good. Maybe you're a kid, you remember. The kid's name was Daniel. And he had this friend named Mr. Miyagi. Remember? And he always calls him Danielson. I do the same thing with my youngest son, Samuel. I call him Samuelson. And Mr. Miyagi was kind of the caretaker of the apartments. And this kid and his mom, they moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. He's trying to make a go of it. His mom moved because she got a better job opportunity, and so Daniel, he's trying to make the adjustment, but he left all of his friends back in the East Coast. He's got that real strong Northeastern accent, and he's not fitting in here, and he gets beat up a few times coming home from school. Just gets off on the wrong foot with some of the different guys there. Finally, he decides, man, I want to defend myself. So one day he's doing practicing some karate. He's looking at a book, and he's practicing some of his kicks, and Mr. Miyagi walks in because he's going to fix their faucet. And he says, oh, karate, you're learning it from the book, whatever, you know. And they start getting this conversation going back and forth. Well, the long and the short of it is, Mr. Miyagi says that he's going to end up teaching him karate. But he says on one condition. This is where the scene is I'm going to show you. He says, you've got to accept everything that I tell you. No questions, and just do it. So Mr. Miyagi has Daniel-san. His dad to start by washing and waxing his car, and he has certain ways that he wants him to do it with his hands. And then he washes like these 4 old vintage cars that are just a mess. And so he spends this whole day into the evening doing that, and the next day he comes back, he's excited because he's going to learn some karate. And Mr. Miyagi has him sanding all these back deck floors all over this huge backyard. Same thing, he's got a different motion with his hand this time. He does all of that the next day. The next day he comes back, he has to paint this huge fence that surrounds the whole thing. And he's got this certain motion that he's got to do. And then the next day he's got to go sideways on the house. So for the first 4 days of karate, all he's doing is Mr. Miyagi's chores. And Daniel-san, he's hacked. Watch this.
Sacred pact. I promise teach karate. That's my part. You promise learn. I say you do. No question. That's your part. Deal?
Steal?
Yes. First wash all the car. Then wax. Wax.
But what do I have to wash all the car?
Remember deal. No question.
Yeah, but
Right. Wax on, right hand. Wax off, left hand. Wax on, wax off. Breathe in through nose, out the mouth. Wax on, wax off. Don't forget to breathe. Very important. Wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off.
Hey, where these cars come from?
Wax on. Detroit. Wax off. Wax on. Wax off. Daniel-san,
What?
come here. Show me sand the floor.
I can't move my arm, all right? What are you doing? What are you... Ow! Ow, what are you doing?
Now show me sand the floor.
How did you do that?
Shut up!
Sand the floor.
Hey, stand up. Show me sand the floor. Sand the floor. Sand the floor. Big sucker, sand the floor. Sand the floor. Yes. Now show me wax on, wax off. Hey.
Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off. Hey, wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Concentrate. Look at my eye. Lock a hand. Thumb inside. Wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Wax on. Wax off. Push. Show me penta fence. Up, down. Up, down, up, down. Other side. Look eye. Always look eye. Show me paint the house. Side, side. Lock wrist. Side, side. Side, side. Yes. Show me wax on, wax off. Yes! 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 Show Show me paint the fence. Yes! 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 Show me side to side. Yes! 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 Show me sand or floor. Yes! 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 Stop! Stop! Oi. And look, I always look, I come back tomorrow.
It's the best scene in the movie. Many times he calls us to do it. We don't have any idea what Jesus is saying. Why we're supposed to say that to that person in that moment. Why we're supposed to leave and go in that moment. But we follow Jesus without question. We don't know everything he's accomplishing. It's beyond tracing out anyway. It's so complex. Do you know there's some things that you're doing right now that will have a generational effect? Generations from now? Some simple little moment of encouragement could keep someone from putting a gun to their head? Some simple little act of kindness could do just what it takes for someone to darken a church building door for the first time? We don't know. We don't know, but we follow these promptings because we believe what Jesus says is true. We do it because we know he's right, even when we don't understand. And one of the most difficult parts of following when we don't understand is doing it wholeheartedly. Full commitment. Total surrender. There are many things that Jesus said about following him that are tough to swallow. Do you know when you made the decision to start following, and if you're thinking still about whether or not to follow Jesus, Jesus actually said, if you follow me, you will suffer. I hate suffering. But he said that you will suffer. You just need to know that to begin with. Jesus said, if you follow me, it will mean times of confusion and doubt. I want clarity. I want to know everything that's... Jesus said, there will be times, specifically, at the end of John chapter 16. In fact, he said, sometimes you follow me, you'll actually be scattered. You'll leave one another alone. You'll be by yourself. Jesus actually said, there are times when you follow me, well, this is an all time. When you follow me, you need to let go of all control. I like control. I like things to work out the way I like them to work out. Our family, I like to, it's a joke, it's a myth, but I like to think I'm in control. Jesus said straight up, you follow me, you completely hand over control. Look at this difficult text. This is Mark chapter 8, verse 34. Look at the screen. This is what Jesus actually told people who were thinking about following him. Calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, okay, anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat. I am. Don't run from suffering. Embrace it. Follow me and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to saving yourself. Your true self. What good would it do to get everything you want and lose you, the real you? What could you ever trade your soul for? Don't you know people just lined up to follow him after he said that? That had to be hard to hear. Being a disciple of Jesus is the opposite of what comes natural. The love of self, that's what's natural. Now, Jesus says, you're completely consumed in your love for me. And a love that is so much stronger than any other love that you have, it appears as though you don't have any other love. It almost appears as though your love for me is so strong that any other thing that's important to you on earth, it almost looks like you have a disdain for that because you love me so much. That's quite a statement. This is probably one of the most difficult things that Jesus ever said for those of us who have become serious about being his follower. And every time I read this, I have a moment of fear because I think, I'm not even close to that. Look at this text. This is Luke 14, verse 25. One day when large groups of people were walking along with him, Jesus turned and told them, anyone who comes to me but refuses to let go of father, mother, spouse, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even one's own self, can't be my disciple. Anyone who won't shoulder his own cross and follow behind me can't be my disciple. Maybe because these couple of word pictures. Is there anyone here who, planning to build a new house, doesn't first sit down and figure out the cost so you'll know if you can complete it? If you only get the foundation laid and then run out of money, you're going to look pretty foolish. Everyone passing by will poke fun at you. He started something he couldn't finish. Or can you imagine a king going into battle against another king without first deciding whether it is possible with his 10,000 troops to face the 20,000 troops of the other? And if his disciples, and if he decides, if he decides he can't, won't he send an emissary to work out a truce? Simply put, if you're not willing to take what is dearest to you, whether plans or people, and kiss it goodbye, you cannot be my disciple. I'm telling you, following Jesus is not for the faint of heart. It's for the bravest of heart. This isn't a decision that you make on a whim. Hey, I think I'm going to give the old Jesus thing a shot. I think I'll give it a try. No, it's not that at all. And I think what's happening is many people coming to Christ are being sold a bill of goods. They're being told, hey, you come and follow Jesus and your life will it'll get fixed. You won't have any more disease. You won't have any more financial problems. And your life will be filled with more joy than you can even understand. And then the person gets hit with all of the suffering and all the hurt and all the pain because you're entering into the thick of spiritual warfare and you feel like you've been exploited. Somebody told you following Jesus was going to make everything rosy and great. And it's anything but. No, if you're serious about following Jesus, you need to hear this to begin with. That's what we feel like we at CPC. We don't feel like we can feed everybody a line that they come in here. Oh, just follow Jesus. It's just constant party. It's not it. It isn't a party. You'll have deep-seated peace. And when you have moments of walking with God, that will far exceed any of your greatest experiences on our own. I'm here to tell you that's there, and that's true. But we are in a fight for the souls of men, and this fight is intense, and the battle is strong. So saying yes to Jesus, being a disciple of His, that isn't something you just, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it a shot. William Booth, the founder of Salvation Army, over a century ago, he was walking with his young son, Bramwell, called him Willie. His young son was only 12 years old. They were walking one evening in the streets of London. And William Booth, the dad, did something kind of unusual. He took his son's hand, he said, hey, follow me. And he took him into a bar. And they walked right into the bar. The place was crowded with people, and their faces showed signs of crime and immorality. There were some people that were drunk, people acting inappropriately, doing insane things. Ought not be done. And the air reeked of alcohol and tobacco. Some of us, that's a good smell. My grandpa smoked tobacco, and I always get kind of a warm place in my heart when I smell tobacco. But for some people, that wasn't a nice thing. And so here's this young little innocent 12-year-old boy being exposed to all this stuff in the life of a local tavern, a little pub. And then Booth did something really interesting. He looked at his 12-year-old son and he said, Willie, and he pointed at all the people in this bar. He said, these are our people. These are ours. This boy looked at it with confusion. He said, these are ours because these are the people we live to bring to Christ. You guys, there are tens of thousands of people in Northwest Arkansas that have already come to know the Lord, and praise Him for that. I don't mean to be offensive with this statement. Those aren't our people. That's not why we're here. We're for the people who don't know. Those are our people. That's our family. Those are the people that we exist to bring to Christ. So, would we be willing, if need be, from our divine directive, would we be willing to kiss everything goodbye so that those people, our people, could be restored? Would we, as Jesus' disciples, say, yeah, I'll train, I'll disciple. And you know what it really means to make disciples? It means to ask someone to come alongside you and to be a student and a learner and a follower and an imitator, as you are too. It's not you're on this some kind of pedestal, I know the Lord, you want to come do it like me? It's not that at all. We're still figuring it out too. But we're asking someone to come alongside. So we found someone really incredible. We want to ask you to come be a part of this. Would we be willing to forsake what little time we have left on earth? And you guys, next to eternity, what we are going through right now is would we be willing for the little bit of time that we have left on earth? Would we be willing to cry that people would come back home? That's CPC. That's us. And as we move around the campus, as we move around Fayetteville or Springdale, wherever we live in this area, and God brings people into our life, is that our purpose? Let me ask you this. As I've been talking, has the Spirit been exposing something in your life right now that maybe He's asking you to kiss goodbye? It's something that's kind of sending a mixed signal to the people that God's bringing into your life, and it doesn't show itself as a Christ follower, as a disciple, and He's saying, I need you to let go of that. Am I willing to call other people to this discipleship? Following at all costs. Here's the deal. Anybody here tired of selling Jesus out? And you're ready now instead to be sold out for Him? That's CPC. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus. All right, let's pray.